hospice, home health. We all got questions. We all need answers. Today, we're diving deep. Stick around. Welcome, everybody. Andrew Bell here with Westminster at Home. I am their marketing and outreach coordinator, and today we are joined by none other than Miss Jasmine Franklin. Jasmine obviously heads up our social services department as well as our hospice admissions leadership team. Jasmine, welcome.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you ended up here.
Absolutely. Like Andrew said, I'm Jasmine. I am the social worker for hospice and home health at Westminster at Home. And I have been in hospice for the last 6 years. Prior to that, I worked in nursing facility as a social worker. So always been working with the geriatric population, and I love it. Hospice is very near and dear to me. I had a personal experience with hospice with my grandmother, which is why I chose to go into hospice services. So I'm very thankful to be a part of this team, and it's a privilege to be able to provide the care that we provide to the patients.
So we've heard a little bit about your past, your history as it were,
Right.
and what brought you here. Would you agree there's a lot of misconceptions out there?
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
There's a lot of misconceptions about hospice. A lot of
Yeah.
times people think that hospice comes in at the very end of life.
I did.
And
I thought that,
yeah, a lot of people do. Very end of life where someone has days left to live and we're administering just pain medication to them.
Right.
And then that's it, the person passes away. But we come in as soon as we can. That is our preference. We want to come in sooner rather than later. So when somebody has a terminal illness or illness that we know that no matter what they do, that illness can be cured or fixed, that is when hospice would be appropriate. So an example would be, end-stage Alzheimer's disease, cancer, end-stage heart failure or lung disease. And our goal is to really focus on the patient's quality of life, keeping them comfortable, and managing any symptoms that they have and avoiding any aggressive treatment. And the patient has to be willing to also say, I don't want to be aggressive with treatment, because that is the philosophy of hospice, is comfort and quality. So Medicare requirements say that the patient has to have a prognosis of 6 months or less, so a life expectancy of 6 months or less, if that disease follows its natural progression. So that's what we really look at. We look at, there's certain criteria under each diagnosis that would be a hospice qualifying diagnosis that they have to meet that criteria before we can go admit them to hospice. And our medical director would review that information and say, yes, they're appropriate, or no, not yet.
So I think that's a great point that you bring up, that it is objective and not subjective.
Yes. It's important to know that people can come off of hospice.
Right.
We've had patients that end up improving with hospice just because of the extra support, the extra care, the extra eyes, and sometimes even taking them off some of their medications gives them a little bit longer, and they kind of maintain. And we still give them about 6 months before we decide is appropriate to discharge or graduate, is what we like to say, because it's a positive thing if they come off of hospice. We also have people that are on hospice for years. I had one recently that was on for 3 years, and that patient just slowly declined over time, but still showed the decline that we have to see for hospice. Also, it's important to know that if you choose to do hospice, you're not locked into hospice. A lot of times people are a little hesitant and they're afraid, and sometimes they want to go to the hospital, or they decide, hey, maybe I want to do that aggressive treatment that I previously discussed not doing. So you can revoke hospice at any time, and you don't have to just say, hey, I'm revoking and I can never go back in again. You can also readmit to hospice after you revoke. So there's a lot of flexibility with that part of it. You're not locked into hospice once you decide.
I think that's a wonderful, wonderful point that, again, not a lot of folk, me included, initially knew of. There's choice.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that in future episodes with the home health side of things. Choice is yours.
Yes.
And I really, really have always enjoyed and appreciated just how much you reinforce that with people.
Absolutely. And I think choices are very important in hospice too. One thing that I always tell my patients is that they are the boss. It is very patient-centered and family-centered. We are just the supportive service and team to them. It's not like the traditional healthcare model where you have a doctor telling you, you've got to eat right, you have to lose weight, you have to do all these things.
You brought up a couple good points in there, Jasmine, actually quite a few. I'm not even sure where to start, but one of was that you refer to it as a team.
Yes.
So hospice, if somebody is referred and it makes sense for them, for their family, what does that entail? Who do they get as part of that team?
So the team is starting with the medical director who can take over the primary care for the patient. So the patient no longer has to go see their primary care doctor. And we prefer that because then our doctor can manage all the care. He would be on call for us 24/7 for that patient. We don't have to call an office and wait for someone to get back with us. So that is our preference. You'll also get a nurse, a hospice aide, a social worker, and a chaplain.
Wow. Okay.
So it's a team approach to care, and we're all very involved with the care. If there is a service that you don't want, like social work or a chaplain, you don't have to have it, but it's very much so a team approach.
Okay. Wonderful. Jasmine, you mentioned some folks. I mean, there is that mindset, I think, in the general public a lot of times that they want to put off hospice as long as they can because they feel maybe it's the last stage as opposed to a redirection of care.
Exactly right.
So tell me a little bit about what the benefits would be to accepting a referral to hospice when the time is right, when those assessments have been made and they qualify. What would be the benefit as doing it then as opposed to, say, doing it in those last days?
I think the biggest benefit for me, just in seeing a lot of different patients over the course of the last 6 years and doing hospice directly, is when we come in sooner, we can form a relationship with the patient and with their family. And the biggest thing for anybody that's taking care of a loved one is trust. And having that trust and knowing that whoever is taking care of you is going to do the best that they can and really care for your loved one and love on your loved one, most importantly. So I feel like when we come in sooner, we're able to do that. We're able to establish a relationship versus coming in a crisis situation, which I have been in before, where we've had patients that we come in and we're having to directly go into managing symptoms because they're in pain or they're having trouble with breathing. And so it's all hands on deck. We're all trying to figure out how to get this patient comfortable, and then shortly after they pass away, and there's no real relationship formed, and we're just having to come in and it's an emergency versus establishing a relationship, getting to know the patient, their medical background, the physical aspects of their care, the emotional aspects of their care as well as the family and how we can best support the family.
Absolutely. And that's exactly where I was going to go next. Is there are some folks that are currently today may meet the criteria.
Right.
And they might not be ready.
Right.
Emotionally, whatever the case may be. Do we have anything for that kind of person, themselves or the family, when they know it's going to be the end road eventually towards hospice,
right?
But they're not ready today to join.
Yes.
So what do we do with something like that?
So we have a hospice bridge program, and that program is designed for people that are either not emotionally ready to accept that they need hospice, or they don't quite meet the criteria.
Gotcha.
So it could be somebody who has dementia, let's say, but they don't have end stage, meaning that they might still be able to talk to you and walk around. They're still eating well. They're doing okay, but we know that with that natural progression of dementia, they're eventually going to get to that point where it hits end stage. So the bridge program is designed for people who, again, are not emotionally ready to accept that they need hospice, but they qualify, or for people that have that quote unquote diagnosis we know will eventually be terminal.
Right.
And in that program, our goal is to provide support to the patient and their family and to work on starting some of those end of life transitions. So talking to them about advanced directives, power of attorney for healthcare, a do not resuscitate order if they don't already have that. Also funeral planning. We talk about things like that too, to really focus on changing the direction of their care and what their wishes are most importantly.
A program like Bridge,
yes,
where, like you said, they may not be emotionally, they may not be physically qualifying for hospice. What kind of cost is there involved with that?
So there is no cost for the Bridge program. It is free of charge. And of course, the goal is to eventually get that patient on hospice.
Sure.
But there is no cost for that. And typically those visits are provided by myself and or the chaplain.
Okay.
And we can also have a nurse come out if we feel that there's a physical decline with the patient or a medical change with the patient.
So there really are ancillary services that they benefit from the earlier, either whether they choose Bridge or admit to the hospice.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Well, about cost, and I'm sorry I keep bringing up money, dollars, and cents. What is the cost of hospice? I mean, is this going to break people? Shouldn't they be focused on just being a family? Is this going to ruin them financially to have to go on to hospice care?
Absolutely not. So Medicare covers hospice. So anybody who is Medicare eligible and has Medicare covers hospice at 100%. So they pay nothing for our services. And commercial insurances typically will cover hospice as well.
Brilliant.
So most insurances have a hospice benefit.
I loved, because honestly, as we say, there's two transitions in life, coming into the world and leaving the world.
Absolutely.
So it's really nice to hear that they're not sticking them within bills.
Exactly right, because that's the last thing that they need.
Absolutely. Jasmine, a question we get a lot is, where can I receive hospice? I mean, it's a big question. Do you get that? And if so, where can these folks receive the hospice care they're looking for?
Yes, that's a commonly asked question. A lot of people think that they have to leave home in order to receive hospice. A lot of times they think that they have to go to a special hospice ward or a house to receive hospice services, but that is not true. You can receive hospice wherever you call home. So that can be your apartment, your home in the community. It can be a long-term care facility, assisted living facility, a memory care center. Wherever that patient calls their home is where they can receive hospice services.
Brilliant. So it's literally direct to you services.
Yes.
Incredible.
We come to you.
Incredible. Well, Jasmine, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
I know there's a lot more questions. I know you guys are going to have more questions. We want you to drop them in the comments below. We want this to be more of an engaging format. We're coming at you with a bunch of different things. Stick around. You're going to find out soon enough. We want you to be fully educated on home health and hospice. It is an important topic to know about. It's an important time to know about it. So Jasmine, I want to thank you so much for joining us on this program today, and we will look forward to providing you guys some more answers, more insights soon.
Yes.
Have a wonderful day, and thank you again.
Bye. Thanks.